Let's take a closer look at the case of a woman known as the Black Dahlia. She was brutally murdered in Leimert Park, Los Angeles, California. Her body was found cut in half, and it was a gruesome sight. She had suffered numerous wounds, resulting in the loss of all her blood. Police detectives investigated many people connected to the case, but were they able to find any leads? Did they uncover the truth about what happened? And most importantly, who is responsible for this crime? Let's dive into the details and see if we can uncover the truth behind this mysterious and tragic event. Your participation is valuable as we seek to understand what happened and find justice for the victim. Elizabeth Short, also known as the Black Dahlia, was born on July 29, 1924, in Boston, Massachusetts, USA. She was the third of 5 daughters in her family. Her dad, Cleo Alvin Short, was in the U.S. Navy, and her mom, Phoebe Short, took care of the house. People knew Elizabeth for being pretty, having black hair, and often wearing flowers in her hair. She attended Medford High School, which she later dropped out in her second year in school. When Elizabeth was 15 years old, she had lungs issue and had a surgery. After the surgery, she was told to live in an area with mild climate to help her respiration. So she was sent to Florida, Miami, and she lived there for 3 years. She has always aspired to be an actress, but she never got the chance. When Elizabeth was around 18, her parents split up. Her dad had to move to Vallejo, California, while her mom stayed in Massachusetts. Elizabeth didn't want to stay in Massachusetts anymore. She had been talking to her dad and decided she wanted to go live with him. Her dad said she could stay with him in Vallejo for free. All she had to do was cook and take care of the house. She didn't have to pay any rent. Elizabeth moved in with her dad, but things didn't go well. She didn't do what she promised to do, like cooking or cleaning. Her dad got upset because of this and asked her to leave, so she had to move out. Later, she found a job at a military camp working at the post exchange. She stayed there for 9 months. Then, for some reasons that aren't very clear, she moved to San Diego. In December 1946, Elizabeth met a lady named Dorothy. They had a friendly conversation, and during their talk, Elizabeth mentioned she was in San Diego for an adventure and that she didn't have anywhere to stay. Feeling sorry for her, Dorothy kindly offered Elizabeth a place to live in her home. Elizabeth was grateful for Dorothy's kindness and assured her that she wouldn't stay for too long. Elizabeth ended up staying with Dorothy for a whole month until January 1947. After staying with Dorothy for a while, Elizabeth said she was ready for her next journey. As she left Dorothy's place, a man named Robert Red Manley was waiting for her in a car. Elizabeth got into the car with him, and they drove away quickly. Dorothy didn't see Elizabeth again after that. Red Manley is a 25-year-old married man. He was a salesman and was also having extramarital affairs with Elizabeth. Together, they returned to Los Angeles, where Manley dropped her at Biltmore Hotel in downtown Los Angeles, as Elizabeth was supposed to meet her sister who was visiting that afternoon. On January 15, 1947, a body was found in Leimert Park, and it seemed to be Elizabeth's. She was discovered by a woman whose name is Miss Basinger. She had called the 911 as soon as she found the dead body. Leimert Park wasn't a very built-up area at that time, which made it a more likely place for crimes to occur. Elizabeth's body was discovered badly hurt, with all her blood taken out. According to reports, she had been dead for about 10 hours before anyone found her. The person who hurt Elizabeth cleaned her body and made deep cuts from the corners of her mouth to her ears. They also cut her thighs and breasts. These cuts made her lose a lot of blood. It's really sad and scary to think about how someone could do this. They even cut her body into 2 parts, and the top part was found some distance away from the bottom part. Whoever did this was really cruel and not acting like a normal person at all. It's hard to understand how someone could treat another person this way. Short's identity was discovered through her fingerprints, which were on file from a previous arrest in 1943. Reporters from the Los Angeles Examiner, owned by William Randolph Hearst, contacted her mother, Phoebe Short, claiming her daughter had won a beauty contest. Only later did they reveal that Short had been murdered. The detectives offered to cover Phoebe's expenses to come to Los Angeles for the police investigation, but this was just a tactic to keep her away from others. Both the detectives and Hearst newspaper sensationalized the case, calling Elizabeth the Black Dahlia and depicting her as adventurous. The media described her as someone who wandered Hollywood Boulevard. Newspapers labeled her murder as a sex fiend slaying, further adding to the sensationalism surrounding the case. After something bad happened, the police wanted to find Dorothy because Elizabeth had been at her place before it happened. Dorothy told the police that a man named Marley had come and taken Elizabeth away in a car called a Studebaker coupe. Dorothy didn't know much else to tell the police. The police then started looking all around San Diego until they found some information about where Marley might be staying. They found out he might be staying in a motel in the Pacific area. In the hotel records, they found that someone had registered and said they were driving a 1939 Studebaker coupe. When the police detective asked the motel staff about this person, they said his name was Robert Manley. So, the police decided to look into it more. They found a picture of him, but they weren't completely sure if it was the same person they were looking for. The only person who could say for sure was Dorothy. Dorothy had seen Manley coming to pick up Elizabeth in his Studebaker coupe, so she could recognize him. The police returned to Dorothy's home and showed her the picture they had found. Dorothy looked at the picture and said that the man in it was the same person who used to come and take Elizabeth away. The police were very happy because they had found an important clue. They felt like they were getting closer to catching the person who attacked Elizabeth. But will they actually catch the attacker? We'll find out more as we go along. The police looked into Manley's background. They discovered where he lived, which was in South Beach, California. They also learned that he had left Los Angeles and traveled to San Francisco with his friend Harry, just 2 days after Elizabeth was attacked. This made the police think that something suspicious might be going on. So they decided to go and visit Manley's house. When the police arrived at Manley's house, nobody was there. So they decided to look around, especially in his garage, hoping to find something strange. And sure enough, they found it, the 1939 Studebaker coupe that the hotel workers had mentioned. The police waited outside his house for 2 days before they finally saw someone come into the house, which were Harry and Manley. On January 19, 1947, both Harry and Manley finally returned to the house. The police took Manley into custody. They asked him a lot of questions, but he seemed to be telling the truth. He even took a test called a polygraph, which checks if someone is lying, and he passed it. Everything seemed okay. But after Manley was arrested, the news spread quickly, and the media made a big deal out of it. People all over California and in other states became interested in this case. After the case became widely known, many people came to the police and said they were the ones who killed Elizabeth. However, they couldn't provide any evidence to prove it, and the police could see they weren't telling the truth. It's strange that someone would confess to a crime they didn't commit, especially knowing they would go to jail for it. It's even more puzzling because they didn't have any proof to back up their claims. The police didn't take these confessions seriously and ignored them. On January 24th, people found a strange envelope. It was sent to newspapers in Los Angeles. The words on it were cut out from newspapers and glued onto the envelope. On the front of the envelope, there was a message saying, "Here is Dahlia's belongings. Letter to follow." Inside, there were things that belonged to Elizabeth, like her birth certificate, business cards, photos, and pieces of paper with names written on them. There was also an address book with the name Mark Hansen on it. The envelope had been cleaned very carefully with gasoline, just like Elizabeth's body had been cleaned. This made the police think that the person who sent the envelope might be the killer. They tried to find fingerprints on the envelope and sent them to the FBI for testing. But when the prints got there, they were messed up and couldn't be analyzed properly. On the same day the envelope was found, a handbag and a black suede shoe were seen on a garbage can in an alley not far from where Elizabeth was found. The police found these items, but they had also been cleaned with gasoline, so there were no fingerprints on them either. Another suspect in the case emerged, and his name is George Hodel. George had been having secret affairs with Elizabeth, but nobody knew about it. George Hodel, a doctor, was suspected of killing Elizabeth Short, also known as the Black Dahlia. Even though he wasn't charged, many, including his children, think he did it. Before this, he had a criminal record for sexually assaulting his own daughter. In 1949, his daughter Tamar accused him of hurting her and making her pregnant when she was a teenager. He went to trial, but was found not guilty. Some believe he scared a witness into not testifying. Tamar's testimony wasn't seen as reliable. After this trial, police started looking at him for the Black Dahlia case because Tamar said he might be the killer. He seemed suspicious because he was a doctor, and the killer seemed to know about surgery. Some people said they saw Elizabeth with Hodel in 1946 in Los Angeles. In 1950, George Hodel was suspected of being involved in the Black Dahlia murder. His home in Hollywood was secretly recorded by police between February and March of that year. The recordings captured him saying things that made him seem guilty. He wasn't officially charged, but he was mentioned as a suspect in a report to the grand jury. However, no one was indicted. Hodel later became a psychiatrist and moved to Hawaii and then the Philippines, where he started a new family. He died in 1999 without ever facing charges. His son, Steve Hodel, a former LAPD detective, has since investigated his father's possible involvement in the murder and has written books about it. He was convinced that his father was involved in this Black Dahlia's case. Christine Reynolds, a 35-year-old mother of 3, called the Oakland Tribune on November 24, 1950, claiming she would confess to the Black Dahlia murder. She was the 27th person to confess. Christine said she knew Elizabeth Short as Libby, and they had a love affair. 4 nights before the murder, Christine found Elizabeth with another woman named Louise, leading to an argument. Christine admitted to choking Elizabeth and then stabbing her with a knife she had. However, she said she couldn't remember stabbing her because she was drunk. The police were skeptical of Christine's story. Christine also claimed to have cut some of Elizabeth's hair and put it in her private part. Christine Reynolds' story started to fall apart when the police realized she knew about the hair being shoved in Elizabeth's private area, a detail only they knew. She then admitted she had lied and that her friend in the LAPD had told her about it. Christine also mentioned waking up with blood on her clothes 2 days before Elizabeth's body was found, but she couldn't remember what happened because she had been drinking heavily. She went to the police to tell them, but they didn't take her seriously. Feeling guilty, Christine tried to confess again, but the police didn't investigate further. In 1950, a drawing of a man labeled as the Dahlia Killer resembled George, but the police couldn't do anything because George had already left the country by then. The tragic murder of Elizabeth Short, known as the Black Dahlia, remains unsolved despite ongoing police investigations. Many other people were suspected at different times, but no solid evidence was ever found to link them to the crime. The killer was never identified up to the present day, and this is how the life of a young, promising woman was abruptly ended. It's saddening that justice couldn't be achieved, but we hold on to hope that someday the person responsible will come forward and confess their crime. We'd love to hear your thoughts on this case. Please feel free to share your opinion in the comments section below. Don't forget to like, subscribe, or email at crimesabroad@outlook.com for more cases, and share this video with others interested. Your engagement helps us continue to provide content like this.